Hello, folks. This is Kevin from Good Day, Good Prayers. Happy weekend to each of you. I want to go over a number of things today. When I mention Congress, I mention corporate heads, I mention bankers, doctors, lawyers, nurses, judges, and I say certain things about them. I might say that those people are this way or they're that way. That doesn't mean that everybody in that category is that way. At this point in time, there might be 20 or 30 or maybe 40% of the people in those various categories that are not good people. But it doesn't mean that everybody is not good. So try not to take offense if you are a nurse or a doctor, if you work in a bank or you work in Congress or whatever. And I should mention the name of whatever it is you do, and I say something about those people. For example, Suicide Weekend or something else. It doesn't mean that you are bad. Now, how do you know if someone is bad? Well, if they have accepted money from the deep state or from the globalists or the CIA for that matter, they're probably corrupted. But if they have not received money from those people, they are probably not corrupted. If a person is a globalist, that doesn't mean they're wealthy. What it means is that they have the globalist ideologies, okay? That means that they are probably Satanists. They've probably believed in or done sacrifice. They've probably molested certain people and so on. However, a person can be wealthy. You can be an Elon Musk. You can be a Donald Trump. You can be a number of different people who are wealthy. But it does not mean that that you are evil and globalist. It means that you are wealthy. And so there is a difference. There are two groups of people, and they've been separate for many decades. And so we need to understand that. The third thing that we should probably try to understand, back in the 1990s, Nelson Rockefeller said, "I don't care who makes the laws as long as I control the money." Now, as I have said before, and I'm going to say it again because there may be somebody here that hasn't heard this yet, the globalists, the deep staters, the CIA, controlled about 90% of the monetary system worldwide. The other 10% was broken up between the wealthy that were good people. They weren't a part of the globalist. They weren't a part of the deep state. They were not a part of any of that stuff. And so out of the 10%, you would have a certain percentage of people who were wealthy, but were not evil. And then you would have a group of people who were the everyday people, like all of us, who had to divide up whatever was left of that 10%. Now, the way they got the money from us was through inflation. We've talked about that. They got money away from us through taxes, but they also got money away from us in interest through the banking and the financial systems. So there were actually three ways in which they got money. Now, we've talked about two of those. We've talked about the inflation. We've talked about taxes. We're going to now add from the banking system and various institutions, we're going to add interest. Now, the reason we're going to do that is because of the fact that during the month of March, we are going to be talking about how that the banking system is going to be affected. understand one thing about everything that is going on, and that is simply this. I told you that judgment is coming to the Democrat Party, and we talked about how they took low-level Democrats, put them in the Republican Party, and came up with what we refer to today as rhinos, and that many of those rhinos were controlling the Republican Party. That's how the globalists, the deep staters, and the CIA got the Republican Party away from the people. Now they not only controlled the Democrat Party, but then they started to control the Republican Party. Once all of that happens, then you and I have no representation whatsoever. The only thing that we can do is, when all hell breaks loose, is lock and load. That's one reason why the militia groups were so prevalent in the 1990s, because of the fact that the people realized that there was an elimination process of the American people. That was then going to go globally. And a lot of that started because of the fact that there was a general in the Japanese military during World War II that said, "We are afraid of America. And the reason we're afraid of America is that we might go into America and we might hide behind the trees, but there will be behind every blade of grass an American with a weapon ready to shoot back at us." In other words, America was the nation that had the Second Amendment and was going to be willing to use the Second Amendment. There are over 300 million weapons in the United States. And because of that, they decided that America had to be eliminated first. So that's what the globalists, the deep state, and the CIA were working on, was to eliminate the American people. In the end of 2024, Hillary Clinton, the current president, who was supposed to be president at that time but didn't become such, was going to be the one who would eliminate the American people. George W. Bush, and then to a certain extent Bill Clinton and George Herbert Walker Bush, ending with Barack Obama, were there, and what they were doing was setting up the stage so that Hillary Clinton could end the United States. Now, 6 years later, in 2030, you hear about the year 2030 in a lot of different capacities. At the end of 2030, then, the population of the world was to be eliminated, except for a group of people who were going to be slaves. Most of them were going to be Asian. There would be very few people from any other part of the world that would have been around. Most of them were considered to be from China and or possibly Japan, and possibly 2 or 3 other nations over in Asia. But the rest of the population, for all intents and purposes, with the exception of some of the globalists, would be completely eliminated. And that's right, the Asian people would have become the slaves. They would have become the people that were sacrificed. They would have been the people that they used for all of the experimentation that they were doing. And they were going to be the people that would do all those things because they would cooperate. The rest of us were not willing to cooperate, hence the Second Amendment and the willingness to make sure that the Second Amendment was used. The other thing is, and if you are from some of these countries, Australia, certain countries in Europe, and other parts of the world, one of the things that happened, you were not allowed to have a gun. You weren't even allowed to use a hat pin to defend yourself in a lot of these countries. Think about that and you will understand why I say that the elimination process was in the process of happening. Not only was it set up, but it was in the process of happening. They tried to implement it under Donald Trump, but what did he do? He stopped it. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, he's involved in it because he didn't stop it in time. Well, he did stop it. Some people will say Donald Trump is a bad man because of all of these hand movements. Well, Donald Trump had to learn those hand movements so that he could help the people who were willing to arrest the evil ones, specifically those who were trying to destroy children and young people. And that is why he does some of the hand movements that he does. Today, I think he does it because he's messing with those of you who think that, because you need to wake up as well as the people who are partially asleep and completely asleep. This is Kevin from Good Day, Good Prayers, and I will see you with another report very soon. So you folks have a good day.